to get them to rethink the whole idea of what is a waste, so that we're no longer simply sending stuff to Riverton or putting it in gullies. We're actually looking now for recoverable value from the waste stream and finding ways to return these products into economically valuable forms of activity. Well, at this point, I was going to talk a little bit more about the foresighting side, but I see that we've only got 8 minutes left to go. So maybe what I should do is take any questions or comments at this point. I believe we're back together again on Wednesday, so I will cover the second half of this lecture on Wednesday. Okay. Okay. Any questions or thoughts or comments so far?
How can we earthquake-proof a building that has already been?
I don't think so.
That isn't the right question.
Makes no sense.
Yes.
You can do something. Yes, of course. The first of all is you should get a proper survey of the building and look at things like, for example, how many stories? Do you have a building in mind?
Well, another question was, are UNI's buildings earthquake-proof?
Not all of them, no.
Okay, so let's start with a 3-story. Okay, a 1-story then. House.
Not sure.
We asked
Very simple principle. Look at what happens between floors. So you've got an upright here for first floor, and an upright here for second floor. Okay, and then you've got the lateral beams, which actually hold up the floors. What you need is cross bracing. So you put an angle like so at each beam. Now that is actually what resists twist. It is possible to go back retroactively and weld in cross braces at the intersections. It's obviously much better to do it when the building is going up, but you can still do that retroactively. Any other questions?
The reconstruction of the power grid, as you're saying, wouldn't that cost a lot of money? And wouldn't they offset the cost by passing costs to the consumer while changes happening?
Well, did everybody hear that question? No. Could you say it again louder?
I was saying, with the reconstruction of the power grid due to the solar panels, wouldn't they offset the cost by passing it on to us, the consumer?
Right. The ability of the power company to pass on costs to the consumer is actually determined by legislation. In a number of states in the United States, power companies actually cannot do this. Their operating license specifies that if their costs go up, they have to make back the difference through efficiency gains. In other words, they are specifically prohibited from passing on costs directly to consumer. The operating license that we gave JPSCo gives them the ability to simply pass on costs to the consumer. That is actually a very bad model because it means they have no incentive whatsoever to invest in energy efficiency. So we actually need to start by looking at the legislation. Any other points at the back?
When you're like in a building and an earthquake just occurred and you feel the building like sway a little bit and come back, is it an earthquake-proof building or?
Actually, if you're in a building in Japan which is earthquake-proof, you will feel it sway because it has to. Think of it like this: you've got a vast amount of energy, and that energy has to be displaced. The point is that the building should not suffer a structural failure. So the buildings in Japan will sway, but inside each building there's a counterweight. So when, for example, the building tips that way, the counterweight is going the other way, and it will then sway back. At the top of the tall skyscraper in Tokyo, when they have a big earthquake, the top of the building can actually be moved by 10, 12, 15 feet, which is very disorienting, I'm told, if you're actually up there at the time. But in fact, it is keeping you safe. It is not going to suffer a structural failure. That energy is actually going one way, and then the counterweight is being pulled up, and then it pulls you back the other way. You're actually being kept safe. However, if you're in a building which is swaying, that does not automatically mean That it is safe. So basically, you need to make sure you're in Japan when this happens. Any other questions? No? Okay, thank you guys.